Two more members are their way into the room.
You said 3 o'clock in the morning?
Lynn wants to go till 3 with Rich Dolan. I think they've found a little mutual attraction going on there. So. I believe he's of your political persuasion more than mine. I'm not entirely sure. Very good. Thank you.
Let's call the hearing back to order. It's been wonderful. We are into our last 50, 60 minutes of it, and it's, again, an honor to have chaired it, and all of my members who've been invited to come, we appreciate your time as well. Many have said they appreciate our time, and we think it's a mutual thing because in Congress, you can only be good at a couple things, and those are your major two committees, and you rely on others to help you get through the mirage of all of the rest of it. So this is new for many of us, and we appreciate you very much. We thought in this last hour or so that we go back to the panel first, if you have any comments that you'd like to make. Then the members will question, and then the members will have closing remarks. We'll try to make time for that, and if you'd like to make a closing remark as well, we'll do that. I'd like to start off with this session with one question for all of you, experienced men of this government and otherwise. Why do you believe today and 30, 40 years ago, the military primarily has suppressed the whole idea of what might be unidentified flying objects or extraterrestrial? And we can start anywhere, but why do you think they've done that? Never mention it again, act like it never happened, it didn't really happen, those kinds of things. Is there something we ought to know there? Anybody got a comment on that? Sure.
First of all, I think it's the technology factor. If they do have tangible objects in hand and have learned some technology, that is a very valuable stuff.
That we don't have. Technology that we don't currently have.
That they have recovered, yes.
Oh, that they've recovered of ours.
If they have recovered UFO technology, that is very valuable stuff, and that's worth keeping a secret. The other thing is, if they were to let the general public know that they have no control over these objects, that they chase them and can't catch them, that's something they don't want the public to really know.
Those are very good. The first being that our country may have acquired some new technology that we learned from them and are now...
I have no idea.
Was that your first point? Was your point
that was
something
my
like that?
first point, if they have recovered technology.
Okay, all right. And
That
the
is
second
one
point,
reason for keeping a secret.
Yes,
The other one is they wouldn't want the public to know that they have no control over these objects, these objects that are seemingly controlled by some kind of intelligence.
And why would they not want the public to know that we don't know what's there, or that they might be superior?
They're afraid we'd panic.
Mr. Scott?
They're afraid that we would panic.
We as a people, we as a country?
As a country, as the world, they're afraid that Western civilization would collapse. Western religion would collapse. Your mind can go crazy on thinking the worst thing, and if you say, well, let's bring a one world government into this for a defense, well, that could prove to be a one world dictatorship also. So I can understand why the military and intelligence is keeping a lid on this until they might feel safe to let the cat out of the bag, but it's going to happen anyway.
Yeah, and those are very good points, both of those. I'm with Mrs. Hollis, and I'm going to come to you, Mr. Dolan.
Okay, I'll state the obvious as regards to my case, and that is these objects know in great detail how our missiles operate.
They know ours, but we don't know theirs.
That's right, and they can shut down our missiles at any time. They have proven that. They know in great detail how they operate, and so if you release that information to the public, what do you say then about what kind of defense do we have against these things? So.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Well,
Captain?
they could shut our missiles down until we put EMF filters on our missiles in the early 70s. And by 76, they couldn't shut them down because, in my opinion, of the EMF filters and some of the documentation that Robert Salas got unsealed, I looked at and found, in fact, in 68, after studying his shutdowns, they were looking at EMF as a problem. And I do distinctly remember our missiles being pulled offline one at a time before our incident happened, and asked one of the members of the security maintenance teams, and they let it out of the bag that it was an EMF filter, and then they got shushed for it. And I also accompanied a nuclear warhead. Our crew duty, additional duty would be to do that on a convoy where we took a nuclear warhead out to a missile site to be replaced, to swap it out. So in my opinion, that EMF filters caused a problem to these entities until they worked around that by the time in 2010 at Cheyenne, Wyoming.
I don't want to disagree with Mr. Fessermacher, but I would like to point out that about the incident that I just mentioned in 2010. The jury's still out as to whether or not that was a UFO incident where 50 nuclear missiles were shut down while objects were seen overhead. But I certainly agree that after our incident in the early days, electromagnetic pulse or electromagnetic force was considered a possible cause for the shutdowns, and the Air Force did have an active program to improve the EMP protection.
Mr. Dolan?
Yes, I think the answers of technology and panic are probably top of the list. Certainly, if even one artifact of a UFO were ever recovered, and those who've studied this matter in detail most believe that that is the case, one can easily see why that would be of paramount interest to keep from other parties that you don't want to have that technology. So the only way to do that for sure is to deny that there's a phenomenon that exists whatsoever. But we actually know from the declassified literature that even as early as 1947, there were wind tunnel tests of disc-shaped airframes that were being conducted at Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio, and these were explicitly based on UFO sightings. We have a document from October 1947, authored by Colonel Wentworth, I believe, in which he references to this. So the obvious connection between UFO sightings alone and technological development is right there from the beginning. But the idea of panic is the worst, because what we find in many cases is that panic can escalate very quickly. 30 years ago in the lower New York State, Hudson Valley, for about 3-4 years, there were a series of unbelievably incredible sightings by thousands of people. This got the attention very quickly of national media. By 1984, the FAA quickly and clearly had, what could they literally say to the world? Yes, there's these enormous boomerang-shaped objects flying over the Taconic Parkway, but don't worry, even though we don't know who they are, we don't think they're here to eat us. I mean, there's nothing that you could say, literally to the public, that would assuage their fears. In 1997, over Phoenix, we have the incident of the famous Phoenix Lights, in which Governor Fife Symington, at a press conference a few days later, brought out a big guy in an alien costume and basically threw cold water over the whole thing, ridiculed it. 10 years later, Governor Symington, at this national press conference in 2007, said, not only did we have to do that to prevent public panic, which was in danger of escalating greatly at that moment, but I myself saw the object in question, and it was unbelievable, and he offered his strong opinion. He's an experienced pilot, by the way, that this is not anything from our civilization.
I've had an opportunity to visit 3 or 4 aircraft carriers that 100 or more planes can fly off of in my defense experience. And the young men and women on ship who, nuclear submarines, I might ask, aircraft carriers as well as nuclear submarines. I've seen the nukes lined up on the submarine, I don't know, 50, 100 deep look like, in rows. We are supposedly the defense country of the world. if there's something in our atmosphere or in the world that may question that, it seems to me, this member, that we need to take a look at it. If they wanted to blow us up, seems like they'd have done it 20, 30, 40 years ago. Maybe they want to coexist. But to not even begin to, whatever, you guys got more intelligence than I have. It's just the wrong way. I mean, there won't be a world. Who wants that? Then my last one at this time would be the press. Very, very powerful. Do any of you know of any occasions where the press might have been, I don't know, caused to go one way or the other, positive or make joke of it or all? Captain Salas?
Thank you, Ms. Kilpatrick. In 2004, I was contacted by the Peter Jennings group, who's putting together a UFO special, and flown to Dallas, Texas for about 2 or 3 days. They interviewed me for a couple of days, got a lot of footage, said I had great testimony, and they were going to feature my testimony on their special. With a week before that special, the Peter Jennings special on UFOs was to be broadcast, I got a call saying that they wouldn't be using my interview. There are other members here of the audience that were also interviewed for this, but to me, they gave me no reason, and so I'm just suspicious that somebody got to them and did not want this story out.
Anyone else have any press out? Well, before we go to the members, does anyone else at the table like to make a final statement as we go through? It may not be your final, because we're going to interact a little while longer. But if you want to add something at this point, otherwise I'll go right. Mr. Scott, Sergeant Scott.
I'd like to see the military and the local police be able to have their people, if they see a sighting or respond to a sighting, to be able to give an honest report of it. Because if it's a lie, if it's a joke, and that it's very easily to find that out quickly. And if it's not, then what we're doing is gathering more intelligence information on a possible friend out there or a possible enemy, and the more information we gather, the better it is for us. And right now, the police department, my brother's a retired policeman. They would send a rookie cop out to investigate. They didn't want to do it. They would laugh about it. But once he found out I was coming here, then he got more serious after all these years, and they told me he believed also.
Very good, thank you. Are you yearning, sir? Okay, let me then open it up to our members for our final, or we can have some dialogue for a little while. Let me start with Congressman Bartlett.
Thank you. I've been looking at some of the press clippings from yesterday's session, and the government has been quite successful in relegating this issue to the lunatic fringe. I have but one article, I have several articles, I'm going to comment on only one of them, and I really don't know where it played. It says the mock Congress hearing on aliens is heavy on real-life Mulders and not Scullys. I had no idea who Mulders and Scullys were until I read it. But apparently, in the X-Files, Agent Fox Mulder believes in all things, little green men, Roswell, men in black, whatever, and Agent Dana Scully believes in science. Scully forces Mulder to find hard evidence that there's a massive conspiracy to cover up aliens' existence. The problem with this week's alien panel, that we're an alien panel now, at the National Press Club, is that any of the participating members of Congress who might naturally be a Scully have been incented to suspend their disbelief because the Citizen Hearing Foundation is paying them $20,000 plus expenses to listen to the testimony. That's just insulting that we can be bought for $20,000. That's ridiculous. Goes on to say that panelists, and they mentioned the panelists, and I'm one of the panelists, and former member Roscoe Bartlett In an opening statement, Bartlett said he hadn't fulfilled his duty in office by failing to hold hearings on extraterrestrial. I never said that. What I'd said was that the Congress, I a part of it, had failed in its responsibility to respond to the constitutional requirement that we had a responsibility to respond to people to petition their government for a redress of grievances. It's in the First Amendment. It's very clear. I never said that I believed in extraterrestrials. I believe that there are sightings out there that cannot be easily explained away. That is one of the possible explanations of them. There may be others, but I never made that statement. Compounding the problem of eyebrow-raising testimonies that several of these politicians have reputations for being a little wacky.
What is that in? Who said that?
And when it comes...
I don't know who said that.
Huh?
Who said it? Who wrote it?
I don't know, if you tell me.
No. Who's it from? What network or paper?
I don't know. You know, I can't tell you. This is the article. You tell me where it came from.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Garbage.
Yeah, I want to read on. Bartlett has, this is why I'm wacky. Bartlett is warned of the dangers of an electromagnetic pulse, a theoretical nuclear blast in space that would fry electrical circuits and kill the internet. This is not theoretical. We did precisely that in 1962 over Johnston Island. It's called Starfish Prime, and it shut down we didn't have any electronics in '62. It shut down electrical equipment in Hawaii 800 miles away. The Congress set up an EMP commission. It functioned for 8 years, for 4 Congresses. It was chaired by Dr. Bill Graham, the science advisor to President Reagan. Johnny Foster was on it, the father of most of our nuclear weapons. Dr. Joan Woodard was on it. She is the deputy director at Sandia Labs. And Dr. Lowell Wood from Lawrence Livermore was on it. This is the person that Tom Clancy told me, in his view, was the smartest man hired by the U.S. government. That commission functioned for 8 years. As a result of their functioning, the Pentagon has set up a permanent commission, a permanent panel, task force on EMP. John Kyle has made a statement that says that this is one of the few, as a matter of fact, I think it's the only event I know of that could end us as a sovereign nation. You can read his comment on that. Now, I'm just insulted that the press does this. You know, these statements have no basis in reality. And I want to point out something else, how successful they've been. Here is a fact sheet that is put out by the Air Force. And it's about unidentified flying objects in Air Force Project Blue Book. They did everything they could to debunk 618 sightings, but 701 of them, they could not find any way to rationalize it away. That's a pretty large number. And then they make 2 statements. You know, one thing they say is that there was never any indication of threat to our national security. Then why in heck the classification, the secret classification, if there's no threat to our security? Those 2 things are just mutually exclusive, aren't they? You can't say one and then not and say the other. They said there was no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represented technology developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge. It reminds me of Goebbels in his statement, just say it often enough, no matter how big the lie, and people will soon believe it. We have radar tracks. We have radar tracks showing that these objects, whatever they are, behave in ways that known aircraft of no country in the world can do. That just isn't true. There was no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles. That's true. But there is a lot of evidence. That they couldn't be anything that is publicized by either our country or by Russia or by China. China is now entering as a player in this domain. I'm generally a pretty quiet individual, but you know, this press stuff is just clearly outrageous. The audacity and the ignorance of something like that just infuriates me.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you.
And then the same press that is ridiculing what we're doing today is totally silent when the Air Force puts out a fact sheet like this, that is anything but a fact sheet, because there are statements on it that are clearly not true. You know, there has to be an accountability for this, does there not? Thank you for holding this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Congresswoman Woolsey.
Well, I have a thought, and the thought is, once there can be disclosure about what is out there and what is coming in, and an understanding, which will take certainly hearings within the Congress and in the House and the Senate. But we have a big question, and that question is, are we doing this because we are going to arm space? And you know, let's just talk about getting rid of humanity in general. That will one more war, but it's up there in in space. We don't want to do that, and I just think this is the sneaky way to get there, by not admitting that there's all of this challenge out there. And I honestly believe that the visitors, the UFOs, have shown us what they can do. I mean, they can turn off full nuclear sites, and they don't have to. That's probably why we have seen less and less recently, because they've done what, you know, if humans can't figure out what they're capable of, then they don't need to show us any other way, because they probably aren't violent, because if they did what they're capable of, they'd probably be eating some of us, you know.
Annihilating.
But they're annihilating us, yes. And we don't, you know, come on. We need to talk about this. We need to be furious at how the press is covering it, and they will. But thank you, Steve Bassett and everybody, and we've got 3 more days of this, you know, so we'll be thanking, I guess, till the cows come home here. But we've got some work to do, and our world has some work to do, not just the United States of America. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Sure. And Mr. Dolan, I do have your part 2, but that's going to I'll come back to you. Okay?
I'm sorry?
I do have your part 2 of your remarks, but I want to come back to you after I've got the members. Senator?
Well, I'm sorry I ruined his afternoon because I brought the breast stuff to his attention. It's garbage. It's garbage. But does that surprise you? I would ask one question on the Peter Jennings. Did they go on with the show?
Yes, sir, they did.
They just took you out?
They just took me out, and I think...
Did they have any good evidence in the show at all?
Not in my opinion.
Didn't do the
Good.
topic.
Okay, that's par for the course for mainstream media. He brought to my attention, so he's ruining my afternoon. This is the fact sheet put out by the government. There is no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentified were extraterrestrial. What else could they be? There's no, I mean, and this, I think, I want to hit a couple of you on this. You know, you can say, well, we're skeptical. Sure, I'm skeptical of everything. But by the same token, if there's no other rational reason for something, you have to come to a conclusion. And the conclusion I can share with you, which is just logic, is if there's anything in this whole compendium of knowledge of UFOs, it's got to be what happened at Minot and Wyoming and so forth. What's been proven is that somebody out there, extraterrestrial, can shut off our defense capability just like that. Just like that. Now, how do you think that makes the people in Congress who are appropriating billions and billions of dollars for a defense system that doesn't work if you really push to shove. And so if there's ever a rationale for the government in cahoots with the military-industrial complex to defend the appropriation process that feeds them, it's got to be what's been discovered, and they've got to put a lid on this. I mean, this makes all this wealth obsolete. I'll give you an example. What happened recently? It happened in Alaska. You know, we've got these silos in Alaska. We've got 16 of them. And, of course, nobody's proven that they work except the phony testing that's been done. Now, as soon as we had this craze with North Korea, what happened? They appropriated money for another 14 silos. That will make 13 silos to go after North Korea. And I don't know if any of you know the defense concept. It's more expensive to build a shield than to build a spear. So you build all the shields you want. All they do is have more spears to get by your shields. So this is the first thing I learned in one of the hearings on the subject. So it doesn't take, you have to go very far to realize that what we have here is the goods of why the simple rational formulation that this threatens the entire Defense Department's capability, and so deny it. It doesn't happen, it doesn't exist. Anybody talks about it, they're idiots. And so the press goes along with this, and we go back to our conclusion of yesterday. You know, I tried to conclude that we have a country ruled by juntas, military juntas in corporation, in cahoots with our corporations. But what's been raised, and I hate to monopolize it on, but maybe this afternoon is going to go too fast, but stop and think what we've concluded. That we're supposed to, now we didn't take an oath here. You took an oath, we didn't take an oath. But obviously you assume that all politicians are truthful. Well, that's a fair assumption. But let me point out to you that the hope is that we will go back to members of Congress and try to persuade them as to the knowledge that we've acquired. Well, I'm for one will confess, I don't know anybody in the Senate that I could approach that could give me 5 minutes time on this particular subject, before or after the hearing. But what this hearing has done is not so much that it's going to persuade Congress, it's the first step to persuading the American public, or getting information out to the public.
And the world.
And that's where I think the great benefit and the contribution made with this hearing. But I just want to add one thing, and I'll follow through on it tomorrow or the day after, and that is, it's fine. We can educate the public, but does the public have any power to act on this new knowledge that they have? I don't see that. All they can do on election day is vote for people like us, who when we're there, don't pay attention to this. This is the problem we have. So I leave it at that. I was going to ask about the $20,000. They're complaining about $20,000. You know, this is 5 days, 8 hours for 5 days. You know, when the likes of these pundits go out and speak, they get $30,000 for an hour. They get $100,000 for an hour and a half. I mean, it's ridiculous that it took that this is raised by, and it was raised in an interview. Somebody raised it with me. And I says, well, what do you get paid when you're out on a stump? This was somebody from Fox. And he confessed, $25,000, $30,000 is what he gets for an hour. And we're putting in 40 hours here. So we're underpaid, if anything, but based upon the knowledge that we have. So I think we've concluded the reason for the cover-up, and that's really what we discovered today, this afternoon, was that somebody can shut off our defense just like that, and it's an embarrassment to the Air Force, it's an embarrassment to the federal government, it's an embarrassment to the Congress, and of course, nobody wants to face that embarrassment. I reserve the balance of my time in case I want to come back.
That's right, that's right. Thank you, Senator, very much. Congresswoman Hooley?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank our panel. You have been terrific. And anyone that wants to jump in and answer this question is, I'm originally from North Dakota. I'm very familiar with Minot. So I have a problem with understanding why anyone would go to Minot, but I'm sorry, that's not a good thing. I love you, North Dakota. But what if wherever they come from, somebody is in Minot shutting off the missiles? Why? I mean, is that to show us that they can do that? Is that, why would you do that?
Can I try that? First of all, the world is facing a crisis right now about nuclear weapons. I don't have to remind you about
Right.
those possibilities in countries that are trying to acquire nuclear weapons. We have enough, and we've had enough nuclear weapons to destroy every living thing on Earth for a long, long time.
Right.
And it would not take much to start a nuclear war, in my opinion. And that risk is getting worse. So I do believe that, and I think they are extraterrestrial, and this is just my opinion, that they are here to at least point to the fact that we are on the verge of annihilation, of suicide, if you will, our own civilization. And they would like to see us get rid of these weapons. And that's the message I got from my incident. That's my own conclusion,
Okay.
that this was strictly a message. Get rid of your weapons. Get rid of those nuclear weapons. They are not weapons of war, by the way. They're weapons of mass destruction.
Right.
They would never be used in a real war because it would just be a complete suicide for civilization, like I said.
Anyone else want to jump in? Yes. Sergeant Scott?
Yeah, in June of 2001, President Bush came on scene on ABC News, and it was carried throughout the networks and in Popular Mechanics magazine. He had with him a general from the Air Force, and he was announcing that the general was going to be the head of a new military force called the Space Force. And they were going to build this force and also put a military base on the moon. Now, nobody questioned him on why, what was the purpose for that. But then September 11th comes around, the terrorist attack comes, this general is posted as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Space Force never comes about. The question I have still, why did he want to create a new military force for outer space unless there's a threat?
We have one. We have a space force. It's in existence. And it's been written about extensively. It's there.
Okay. Good. All right. Okay. Some acknowledge it and some don't. But your point's well taken, Sergeant.
Black Ops?
Black Ops is real.
Well,
Yeah, I know.
you want me to answer that?
No?
No, I won't.
No. No. Let me go to I'm sorry.
He jumped in.
Right, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. Continue. It's your time, Congresswoman.
I'd like to hear from you.
I just said that what he's talking about is Black Ops. And I don't doubt that. But I'm concerned that they're trying to tell us. I don't quite totally agree with Bob, but I do agree with
That's
him.
okay.
I think they're at least trying to tell us that pay attention. You know, we have the power to do this. Be careful. You know, and one of my, I've got scenarios in my mind I've thought about this an awful lot. And one of my scenarios is perhaps, in fact, they've communicated with the leaders of the world and said, back off from the stuff, or else you're going to annihilate yourself. And maybe that's why we cut back some of our missiles. In other scenarios, do these, I'll call them beings, do these entities, are we aware of these entities enough that they can go public instead of saying, you can't handle the truth, we can handle the truth? And going public with an innocuous thing like harmless beings that are visiting us just to keep in touch and everything's fine? Or do they consider us a species like we consider apes a species, or dolphins, or perhaps rodents, or perhaps insects? So that sort of thing I don't want to know about. If it's just the fact that they're visiting and they're trying to tell us to watch out for nuclears, they can come forward with that. The government should come forward to let us know, to ease our minds a bit. However, if it's the other scenarios, I just want them to come forward and lie to us and tell us the entities are nice beings and they just want to warn us about nuclear. I can't handle that truth, that we're insects to these people, these beings. So.
Thank you so much. Yes. David?
You've asked us to speculate. I don't know. You probably don't know.
No, I don't.
But these missiles being shut down, Captain Salas described 2 flights that he's aware of. I described to you 1 flight of 10 missiles that I'm aware of. But I'm also aware of other launch officers who've described to me similar situations. So, it's not unique that him and I have been involved here. I mean, this was a situation that was occurring quite often when I served in 1966 and 67. And who knows that it's not still happening out there. There is no active officers of any kind that will come out and admit that right now. But what I'd like to know is, what's your speculation on these missiles being shut down?
What, is that rhetorical, or you need an answer?
I'd like an answer to that.
Okay, let me come back to you.
Because I'm sure it would be just as good as
That
my
might be
answer.
something to end on, too.
If
Let me
I may just offer one very 30-second opinion. I feel that we really do not have enough data, even now, to know exactly why this is happening. Because despite the number of cases where this does appear to have happened, there are thousands of missiles. And not all of them have been shut down, as far as we can tell. So if they're doing this, they're obviously not doing it uniformly. And I don't really feel that any researcher has enough data to know precisely what those motivations might be. They obviously, they seem to have demonstrated superiority over our technology, that's for sure. So at discrete moments, they seem to be able to do this, but they're not doing it uniformly. And they certainly haven't stopped all of the massive wars that have, run over the planet. So there are certain limits as to what they're willing to do as well.
Thank you. And I yield back my time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Congressman Cook?
Thank you. From the things that you've described today, you all must have done what Captain Fenstermacher just indicated he has done, and that's think about these things a lot during the times when you didn't say too much anything publicly, and after you've come out and started speaking, which again I congratulate the 2 of you that have done that today for, I understand, the first time. So I think, I've got to say, I think your speculations are a lot more informed than what our speculations might be on this. So I'd like to start with Captain Salas, and each of you have also said, I think, if I'm wrong on this, correct me, but that you all complied as you were asked to do and required to do with the non-disclosure statements almost immediately after you described to your seniors in the military what you had just witnessed. Am I correct on that?
Yes, sir.
You didn't.
See, I was involved in 3 sightings, 3 different bases, and not one time did I have to sign anything away.
Okay, Sergeant Scott, I appreciate that clarification. But I'm right. For example, let's start with Captain Salas. you signed those?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay,
I signed
so-
a non-disclosure statement.
Absolutely. And I think your reasons that you might give this committee, this panel, as to both legitimate reasons why you might have been thinking over the years or at the time that the Air Force might have asked you to do that, and the illegitimate reasons why they might have asked you to do that. You must have some idea on both sides of this why did they make you come in and sign that right off the bat? I mean, and why were you then here? The whole culture was, don't talk about it or you're going to be in trouble. What were the legitimate reasons for that, if any, or illegitimate reasons for that, if any?
I think I discovered the main reason, and that is this on? Okay. That the Conant investigation was ongoing at the time.
Okay.
And the idea of the Conant investigation basically was to give the Air Force a way out of investigating UFOs. And if they had allowed me to speak to the Conant investigator about my incident, and Mr. Fiegel and Mr. Mywald and Mr. Carlson, they would have discovered that this was really a serious problem. And so that, I think, was the primary reason they were so anxious to get us to sign these non-disclosure statements at the time.
But that can also be very illegitimate, am I right? I'm talking about from the Air Force's standpoint.
Well, if
What I mean is,
if they were honest about this,
Yeah, now,
that
what
would have
should
been
they have done?
illegitimate.
And my question is, what should they have done, and what should we start insisting the Air Force do?
They should have been honest about it. They should have
couldn't
been
agree more with
straightforward
honesty.
about it and let the people handle it. This belongs with the people. The people should decide something of this import and not a small group of individuals in and out of government, which is what is going on right now. There is a small group of individuals inside government and outside government that are controlling this phenomenon. They're controlling the technology, they're controlling what's said about it, they're spreading disinformation about it, they are controlling the press, I think. And that's how they're keeping the ridicule factor going.
Well, 1967 or 66, during your experience, that's 45 years ago. 46 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Why aren't they releasing some of these statements by now, if you have any reasons for it? I mean, I just want to, I want to understand this as best I can. There's no way to pry open a can unless you have the right tools to pry it open with.
If you just want my opinion, I'll be glad
Yes,
to.
well, that's what I'm asking. I
just give
want to
you
know
an
anybody
opinion.
else's opinion if you have one.
I do think it's about power and greed. It is not about concern for public safety. That window passed a long time ago. But right now, because they have discovered so much about of the technology and many other things regarding to this phenomenon, including paranormal subjects like telepathic thought, things like that, which are part of this phenomenon. We didn't talk about it, but it is part of the phenomenon. And the abductions that are going on, another part of this phenomenon. This is such a complex thing that these secrets are so powerful that the men controlling this, men and women that are controlling this, I think the main motivation is power and greed.
Captain Fenstermacher, we're going to ask you this then. You made the comments about the filters, and I don't know all the technical terms, but I was quite interested. The timing of those filters coming on to protect nuclear installations, and that was in the 70s, you say? Well,
74, 75.
I would ask Captain Schindel and Captain Solison, isn't it likely or not that what you said to them, they believed you because they started building technologies to protect against the very thing you were witnessing about? Am I right on that?
Well, sir, as Mr. Bartlett pointed out, it was well known that nuclear explosions produce electromagnetic pulse.
But they don't just appear to the point where you need filters for the silos. Well, go ahead. Excuse me, I didn't mean to.
There was a bench test done at Boeing on the logic coupler, and it was shown in this bench test that at a certain frequency of EMP injected into the logic coupler, that the coupler would be disabled. So they had that evidence. And so there's no doubt in my mind that one reason they tried to protect the missiles from EMP was nuclear explosions, but the other was as a result of the incident that I just described, to help protect against UFO disabling the missiles.
But of course, they knew
but
that.
Whether or not it was successful is another question.
Okay.
Gentlemen, would you yield for just a moment?
Oh, certainly.
I just wanted to make an observation about that. We have, using these bench test facilities, several times noted deficiencies in our ballistic missile system, and we have corrected those. The last time we tested and the last time that we found deficiencies and fixed them, we never tested. We don't know whether they're fixed or not, but neither do the Russians. And so there's that big question, and that's how we left it. They aren't so sure what they'll work. We aren't dead sure they will work, but if there's any question about whether they will work or not, the mad philosophy still is operative, isn't it?
Okay, I appreciate that. And also just wanted to quickly ask then, so it's a little bit unclear in your mind, Captain Solis, Captain Schindel, that these filters that came in the 70s that were described here today, that they could have been brought forth by the Air Force because they were finally getting to something they felt had occurred as early as or that they knew about as early as the 1950s, or something they might have experienced from the testimony. It could have also been what you had told them. Either one, maybe. Or is that? Yeah, well, and I know I'm kind of into the weeds on this a little bit, and I apologize for that, but I just wanted to know whether, I mean, it really struck me when I heard Captain Fenster talk about the shields and the filters, that they had to have believed your testimonies and what you said you saw that day. They had to know that something was definitely happening, and then to keep this silent for 46 years, as we've talked about. You know, I wasn't sure about this whole truth embargo even a few days ago, but this truth embargo indeed needs to start coming down.
That Bob Salas had released was very lengthy, really with 3 sub-documents, and I spent a lot of time scanning it, and in fact, there was a little piece about UFOs. What it was a technical explanation of all the echo sites and what happened at each of the sites in the first document. And there was a little piece about UFOs, and it said, the rumor of any UFO creating this is disapproved, disowned, I think was the word.
Disproven. The rumor was disproven. Now, I don't know how you disprove a rumor.
Yeah. But at the very end document, it was a 68 document where they talked about they were concerned with how EMF affected it, and that Boeing was going to work on the EMF problem. And I think what we installed was the result of his Echo and Oscar flight, and not his testimony, because it didn't happen. They didn't believe him, but the technical...
Just because they said they didn't believe him doesn't mean they didn't believe him.
Well, yeah, but the technical aspects, they couldn't say didn't happen, because Echo flight had all these errors, and this is what happened.
Okay. I think you're being very humble, Captain Salas. You probably, and all of you, because you probably create a lot more technology than you believe, or that you even are willing to talk about.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Congressman Bartlett, did you have another comment you'd like to make? Did you have another comment?
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to make a comment about the ballistic missile defense that the Senator Gravel was talking about. He's correct. Our major ballistic missile defense is in Alaska. It will intercept missiles coming over the pole. Most of our potential enemies, the shortest route to get here is over the pole. In my judgment, I hope it will never be used, because the only time I think that it would be used is when the Russians, if they were to launch, and it would be very quickly swamped. They have thousands of missiles. If we're lucky, we'd take out the first half dozen or so, and that's it. This system is really made to defend against countries like North Korea and Iran. These people may be evil. They are not idiots. They will not launch from their soil. I have no idea why we're waiting until they develop an intercontinental ballistic missile which will reach us. They know that we will know from where it was launched, and they know that within about 30 minutes they will be vaporized, the whole darn country. They are a huge threat. But the launch will not come from their soil. It will come from somewhere in the ocean. We have big coastlines, essentially totally unprotected, and they will not be protected. Even if we decide we need to protect them, they'll not be protected for years. And that's where the real threat comes from. And I think that the monies we have spent on our ballistic missile defense in Alaska are wasted monies, because we cannot protect ourselves against Russia. In my judgment, they're the only country that would ever come over the pole. Because if you have 100 weapons coming over, you know darn well where it came from. No one else has that many. So you know very well where it came from. It came from Russia. So they have no reason not to come over the pole. No one else has very many weapons, and they're not going to launch from their soil, because they know that, with our triad, with our submarines and so forth, they know that within about 30 minutes we would vaporize them. Do you think they would do that? That they're a huge threat, but it's from the ocean. It is not from their soil. Thank you.
Thank you. That was rhetorical. You don't feel compelled. Let me get up. Sir, Senators also want to make a final comment.
Oh, no. I want to follow through with that. Captain, you made a challenge to us to respond. Would you repeat that challenge?
Well, you asked us to speculate on the reason.
No, you were asking us something that
Well, I asked you right back. What's your speculation?
Well, here, you were wondering whether or not we have forces in space. What do you think that all of these weapons are, ICBMs in Alaska, are about? Do you think they're about Korea? He's mentioned possibly Russia. They're not about Russia. We can, with our submarines, one submarine can hold, which has got over 250 warheads. We can hold any people in the world hostage. Did you not notice a year ago, it's within a year, that the United States had a satellite and we let it come to Earth, and before it came into the atmosphere, we shot it down to make a demonstration that we have the capability of shooting down satellites in outer space? Do you recall that? Okay. Do you recall that 6 months later the Chinese did the same thing to tell us tit for tat, you can do it, we can do it too? And what country, and of course the amount of money we're spending to weaponize outer space is the supreme idiocy of the American government. Because we are the most vulnerable. If you talk to any scientist, any explosion in outer space, who's got the most satellites? I mean, you had to wipe out our whole communication system. You had to wipe out our economy. We're all dependent on satellites. So this is the kind of leadership and the appropriations that go forward in this idiocy. And now when you talk about, you get a president of the United States when we cut back, 100 nukes, and the Russians cut back 100 nukes, and we're breaking each other's arms, patting each other on the back. Just think of the insanity of targeting Russia and China today. Our banker is China. Russia, all they want to do is sell gas and oil to Europe so they can live well. And so it leaves you with the question mark, and this goes back to maybe and I'll end on this. You can be suspicious of what we don't know, But what we do know is so horrifying that you don't have any room for suspicion. It's a fact. And thank you very much for your testimony. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair and just thank you all once again. We've had a wonderful day, from bent waters to nuclear and all that you've done. Tomorrow promises to be the day 3 with Roswell and others we are anticipating. We have thoroughly enjoyed you as presenters, as an audience on the subject. I don't think we can solve it all tonight. You guys are light years ahead of most of us on it. But do know that you have our ear and that we look forward to working with you. And with that, the prerogative of the chair, given to me by none other than Mr. Stephen Bassett. Just know that your written testimony will become part of our permanent document, and this committee is adjourned.
Did you say you didn't want to do it?
No, I don't know.